Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Lokashankaram. So in the last class we were studying the 98th and the 99th verse of the Vivekachudamani, where we found after describing the subtle body, the Sukshma Sharira, which is composed of 8 components. And those 8 components, we will again come to the discussion today. And it was shown that the Atman is different from the subtle body. After describing the subtle body, the next verse which we are going to study, the 100th verse, is going to specifically mention that the Atman, the essence of our being, is not even the subtle body. There is a confusion that even we will say that when the body dies, when one dies, the Atman comes out of the body. Actually, the Atman is associated with this gross body as well as the subtle body. What actually is meant is that the subtle body gets dissociated with the gross body at the time of the death, but still the subtle body is there to transmigrate, and that subtle body is not the Atman. Atman is something different from it. So the thing that the idea of the death, the time of death, the self coming out, is in a way an erroneous idea, because it is not the self, it is a subtle body which in association with the Atman. The Atman is associated with the gross body as well as the subtle body. At the time of death, what transmigrates is the subtle body, not just the Atman. So that is being stated in the 100th verse, that the subtle body which we studied is not the Atman. Atman is something different from the subtle body. So, what's the verse? Let us read it and then we will go to the discussion. Sarva Vyapriti Karanam Lingam Idam Syat Chidatmana Pungsaha Vasya Adikam Iva Takshnaha Tena Eva Atma Bhavati Asanga Ayam. Asanga. That's the catch point in this verse. Asanga, unattached. Sanga means attachment. Asanga. That Ayam, that Atma, is in no way attached to the subtle body. They give an example. What is the example here? That just the way when the carpenter is working with the tools, it's working on something, on the wood with the tools. The tools are like the subtle body. The wood is like the gross body. But the one who is working on them is different from both the tools as well as the wood on which it is working. So, Atman is something different that way. The carpenter is in no way identified either with the tool or with the wood on which it is working. So, it is separate from both. So, similarly, the Atman is separate both from the subtle body as well as the gross body. So that's the idea which has been spoken of here. Let us try to understand it word by word. So Lingam Idam. Lingam Idam. The word Linga indicates the subtle body. Why? Because Linga actually means sign. That what differentiates me and you and all the individual beings in this earth. What's the thing which differentiates? It's the mind. In mind, we will find we are all having different temperaments, different biases, different type of desires. All won't have the same type of obsessions and desires, biases, opinions. So it is our mind that distinguishes me from other. So that's why this mind, the subtle body, is called the sign, which individualizes me, which separates me, which makes me a unique entity from other. So that's why it is called the Linga Sharira. Just to give an example, if you go to a mobile shop, all the mobiles are of same type, isn't it? That if a same brand mobile are all same. I buy one mobile and what I do, I personalize it. I will be uploading my old contact details, my own apps, and the same mobile which was Alinga. You couldn't distinguish one mobile from the other. The moment I buy it and I have my own contact details, I have my own, the apps and everything. So nowadays you will find in the crime scene, what is the thing which they search for the first is the mobile. That it distinguishes the mobile, all the things you have, the contact details, everything. That distinguishes you from the entire world. From that, they can easily trace you. Everything they can do with the help of the mobile. Where you have called, to whom you have called, what are your connections. Everything can be found out. But how it become individualized? Only after buying and after, as per your desire, as per your contacts, as per your circumstances, you have personalized it. So similarly, like the hard disk of the mobile phone, our mind also in general as such is Alinga. But when it gets individualized because of the ego, the mind is getting individualized, and then it distinguishes me from the entire existence. So that's why the mind is called the Linga Sharira, that by which I can distinguish one thing from the other. The meaning of the lingam is that which distinguishes one thing from the other. So the subtle body, this lingam idam, is the instrument for all activities. The sarva vyapriti karanam. Karanam means the cause. Sarva vyapriti, whatever activities are going on. Of all that, the cause is the subtle body. From there, all the instructions, all the desires, the biases, all the motivations, everything is generating from there. So the instrument of all activities is the subtle body. And of the Atman, who is the subtle body, is the instrument for all activities. Who is doing all those activities? That without the presence of the Atman, the subtle body is inactive. It cannot work. It gets activated in the presence of Atman. So it is the Atman for whom the instrument is as if the subtle body. So for the Atman, who is the ultimate, the knowledge absolute. So Chidatmana Pumsaha. That's the knowledge absolute. He is the one who is the absolute. For him, as if like an instrument, the mind is working. The subtle body is working. And then they give the example. Vasya adikam iva takshnaha. So takshna is like the adze. It's a tool, just like a tool. What's the tool that takshna is? It's called adze. Adze, you know that it's almost like an axe. So in the axe, it's an axe, but its cutting edge is perpendicular to the handle. It's not parallel to the handle, it's perpendicular. There are two types of axe. The axe in which you find the cutting edge is perpendicular to the handle, it is called adze. It is not the axe. So the carpenter uses that. So it is just tool in the hand of the carpenter, that takshna. So vasya adikam. So and the other tools of a carpenter. So vasya adikam means the other tools, eva takshna. The takshna is the one who is using that instrument, the carpenter. So it is like the instrument. The carpenter is like the tool in the hands of the carpenter. What is the example they are giving here? That's just the way a carpenter uses its tool to work on the wood. Similarly, the Atman is using the subtle body to work on the gross body. So, therefore, the Atman is perfectly unattached. So, tena eva atma bhavati asanga ayam. So it is in no way identified with the subtle body. It is something separate from it. So, now in this 100th verse, it just gives you the idea that subtle body is different even from the Atman, is even different from the subtle body. That we have an idea that Atman is something different from the gross body. And we sometimes identify the subtle body as the Atman. So here, gradually, layer by layer, Shankaracharya is taking us to the conclusion that not even the subtle body, which we confused with Atman, is actually the essence of our existence. Atman is something behind it. As we have already studied, what are the 8 components of the Linga Sarira? The 5 organs of action is the first component, all the 5 taken together. The 5 organs of perception, that we perceive through our eyes, through our ears, we smell through our nose. These are all perceptions. We taste through our tongue, and we sense our touch through the skin. So these are the 5 organs of perception. And what are the 5 organs of action? After sensing something, we respond through our hands. This through our feet, our legs. So the hand, the leg, the feet, the organ of speech, the organ of evacuation, the organ of regeneration. So these are the 5 organs of action. So these 5 organs of action, you may say, these are in the gross body. As in the last class we described that Swami Vivekananda very simply has given that example, that you see a very muscular man lifting a weight. I think it is a muscle which is lifting the weight. But you just cut the nerve which is joining his nerve, this brain, with the muscles. You find that in spite of that huge muscle, he is almost paralyzed. Nothing can work. So the real organ of action is in the mind, from where the instruction is coming. Muscle is just the external instrument. It is just the external instrument. Or the real organ of action is in the mind. Similarly, the real organ of perception is in the mind. You may have the most beautiful pair of eyes, but if the optic nerve has dried out, you cannot see anything. So the real vision is in the mind again. These external organs are just the orifice. So they are not the real organs of perception. So when Shankaracharya is saying that all the subtle body has the organs of action and organs of perception, it means the centers from where the action originates in the mind, and the centers where the stimuli is perceived in the mind. They are the organs of perception, and from where the order comes, where the action originates, that's again the organs of action. So these 5 organs of action is one component, 5 organs of perception is the second component, 5 tanmatras. This tanmatras again is not something external. By tanmatras it means piecemeal perception. What's the idea? Very nice idea. Thousands of years back, they understood that how the perception happens. That in the brain, there are various organs of perception. They're all separate. That example which we give again and again. When I'm seeing the red flower with its fragrance, with its texture is not visualized in the brain in one as a whole. It is not perceived in the mind as a whole. What happens? The color is perceived in the color perception center in the mind. When you touch it, the texture is perceived in another center. Its shape is perceived in some other center. And its smell, the fragrance is perceived in some other center. And they all conglomerate to give you a picture of whole. So the picture of whole is something which is produced by the mind. But the perceptions are happening all piecemeal perceptions, separate perceptions. Just the example which we gave, that when I am watching a movie, I look at the character in the screen talking, I feel the character is talking, but what actually is happening? The screen is silent, it is just moving, the lips are moving. The sound is coming from some other sound box. These two are synthesized in the mind to give me a feeling that the character is speaking, isn't it? So all this synthesis happens in the mind. In the mind, first the piecemeal perception happens, which synthesizes to give you the conception, the idea of a whole. There's a whole flower, it has a nice fragrance, it has a nice smooth texture. So these 5 tanmatras mean all these 5 piecemeal perceptions which are already there in the mind. A small child, when he is born, his mind is not blank. With all these the ideas of these perceptions, piecemeal perceptions are there in the mind. They are lying there dormant. So they are like the tamas, they are the darkness, they are lying dormant. When I am in deep sleep, they are all dormant. When I wake up, open my eyes, the light falls on it. I look at a flower, the flower brings the light in my light, touches my eye, and all those concepts which were dormant, which were lying in dark, they as if pop up. It's not that something external I'm seeing. All those ideas, piecemeal perceptions which were there, they all pop up and then they conglomerate to give an idea of the whole. So all these ideas of piecemeal perceptions which are in my mind lying dormant, they are the tanmatras. So they are the third constituent of the mind. And this is the prana. To activate them, you need the vitality. So this vitality is spoken of as the pranas. So they form the fourth component. The fifth component is the this component is the mind with its four functions. That, as we told, the mind is what it is doing. It is synthesizing the piecemeal perceptions to make it a whole. It gives a picture of the whole, and then it throws it to the buddhi. Buddhi is just like the search engine. In the Google, if you have to search anything, you just give it and then the search engine will give you the details of it. So the manas is just combining all the things and giving it to the buddhi, and buddhi is nischayatmika. From the storehouse of all the perceptions which are there in the mind, it compares and then determines that yes, this is the rose. Previously I have seen rose, this is the same thing. So this is the red rose. This is dog, this is cat, this is cow, whatever we are seeing. Everything the buddhi compares and brings it to the mind. So mana, buddhi, chitta. Chitta is the storehouse of all those tanmatras, of all those concepts. And ahankara is the ego. If only the picture is formed, there won't be any reaction. Unless I have that idea that I am an individual, certain thing helps me to sustain, certain thing is dangerous for me. It will disintegrate me. So I have to react to a particular perception in a particular way. To certain perceptions, I will be drawn towards. To certain perceptions, I will be repelled. So what it speaks of? These reactions because of that ego. When the ego is generated, when I start feeling I am this body-mind complex, then what is generated in the mind? Then the ego comes to picture to react on it. So these four components of the mind, mana, buddhi, chitta, ahankara, forms the fifth component. And then 6th, 7th, 8th is avidya, kama, karma. As we told, avidya is the ignorance. The moment the Atman identifies with the body-mind complex, the ego develops, that ahankara develops. When the moment the ahankara develops, the kama comes into picture. The moment the ego comes, the desire arises, either in the form of attachment or in the form of hatred and fear. Hatred and fear is also desire. Why? That I hate something. Why I hate? Because I am tremendously attached to the life, to this individuality. Anything which it disintegrates, I am running away from it. So hatred actually speaks of attachment. Fear speaks of attachment. So all these three, when the moment the ego comes into picture, the kama arises. The desire arises to sustain it. And to sustain it, I am reacting it in these three ways. Either in the form of attachment is drawn towards it, raga, or dvesha or abhinivesha, hatred or fear. So either in the form of obsession or in the form of fight and flight response. So these all speaks of obsession, fight and flight response, all taken together is the kama, avidya, kama. And once that desire is there, karma, it will result in action. Even for a small microbe, if you give a nutrient, it gets drawn towards it. That speaks of action. It is drawn towards it. And if you give some poison, it will be repelled. That again speaks of action. So the moment the desire arises, there will be some action. So these constitutes the subtle body, as we have already described in the last class. But these 8 components, again, are the tools of the Atman. The Atman, having the sense of identification with though it is not identified, because of the ignorance, it feels that it is identified with the body-mind complex, and then it uses as a tool to work on the gross body. The gross body is like the wood. Determine its destiny. Life after life. It is determining its destiny by working on the gross body with the help of the subtle body. So the example of the The carpenter is taken here. That's the way the carpenter uses its tool, but the carpenter is separate from the tool. Similarly, the Atman is something separate from the subtle body. It uses the subtle body to work on the gross body to determine its destiny, life after life, through the process of transmigration. So hence you will find that in Shushupti, in deep sleep, there is no action. At that time, the Linga Sharira has stopped working. The Linga Sharira, which is active in the waking state, which is active even in the dream state, is something which has subsided down in the Shushupti state. So that's the time when we find that there is nothing as such, that activity is going on. The only state where there is no activity is the deep sleep, where the Linga Sharira also has, come to rest. Why we are speaking of that? That when we wake up from deep sleep, we know we were sleeping, isn't it? So that speaks that someone was there who was witnessing even the deep sleep. Otherwise, how would I know that I was in deep sleep? So that I know that I was in deep sleep, that speaks there is someone who is witnessing the absence of activity. That's what in Yoga Sutra very nicely it has been told. What is the deep sleep? Abhava pratyaya alambana vritti nidra. Abhava pratyaya. That the vritti is the thought waves. But thought waves, each and every thought wave has a content. When I am seeing the flower, the content of the wave is the flower. When I am seeing a book, the content of the wave is the book. But how nicely in the Yoga Sutra they have defined deep sleep. They say the mind is not totally, still. Waves are still there, the vrittis are still there. But they have no pratyaya, abhava pratyaya. There is no content in it. And that's something someone is witnessing. That the one who is witnessing is the Atman. So it's only in Shushupti we find that Linga Sharira also has come to rest. That speaks that Linga Sharira is not one with the Atman. It is something separate from the Atman. Because in deep sleep, we are witnessing that abhava, the absence of the activities. That speaks that there is some witness which is apart from the Linga Sharira. That's been in general spoken of in the 100th Sutra, in the 100th verse of the Vivekachudamani. Now Shankaracharya, what he will do, now there are so many components as we saw, the 8 components. He will analyze this, he will do that analytic study, he will take each and every component one by one to analytically find out that the Atman is something separate from all those 8 components. So that's what he will do. So that Atman is different from the sense organs, the organs of action and the organs of perception. So these are the 2 components of the subtle body which is separate from the Atman. Now specifically he will take one by one all these 8 components to describe that they are something separate from the Atman. They are not identified with the Atman. They are not one with the Atman. So first he takes the sense organs in the 101st verse. What he is saying? Andhatva, mandatva, patutva dharma, saugunya, vaigunya vashat hi chakshusha, vadhirya, mukatva, mukha tatha eva, srotradi dharma, natu vetu atmana. So this blindness, andhatva, weakness, sharpness, these are the conditions of the eye. We know that sometimes that someone may be blind, someone though have a vision but have a weak vision, and someone may have a sharp vision. So andhatva, mandatva, patutva dharma. This is the conditions of the eye, and this is mainly because of the fitness or defectiveness of the eye. Saugunya, vaigunya, vashathi, chakshusha. So similarly, for this vadhirya, the deafness, the dumbness, mukatva, and all these things, etc. of the ear. See here, very nice. Even in those days they understood this true thing, that if you are deaf, you are bound to be dumb. Nowadays, of course, through speech therapy for a deaf person, they do speak, they do teach the language. But if you are deaf from a childhood, the one who never hears, how can he learn language? Unless he hears, he cannot learn. So just see that mukatva, which speaks of dumbness, that also has been categorized as a defect of ear. The dumbness has been categorized as a defect of ear. The deafness, the dumbness of the ear, and so forth. This vadhiriya, mukatva, tatha eva, srotradidharma, of the ear. Natu vetu, but they never in any way affect the Atman. That Atman is something separate from this. That we find in one of the Upanishads, Kathopanishad, there is another nice sloka. What does they say? Which actually reflects the same idea. Surya yatha sarva lokasya chakshur na lipyate chakshushair bahya doshai. That if I am jaundiced, if I am seeing everything yellow, that is the defect of my eye. But does it affect the sun in any way? The sun is giving light same to all. But because of my eye's defect, I may not see it as it is. It may be tinted with that yellow color. So Surya yatha sarva lokasya chakshu. Because of the sun, everything is visible. But does my eye defect in any way affect the sun? No. So ekas tatha sarva bhutantaratma. Similarly, the Atman is the one. It is the one which is residing in the heart of everyone. But it is in no way getting affected by the sufferings of the individual beings. Na lipyate loka dukkhena bahya. So it is the one which is the innermost self of every being. It is immanent, but at the same time it is transcendent. It is not getting affected. Just the sun, when it reflects in the waves of the water, suppose in the ocean there are innumerable waves. In the sky there is one sun, and I see that the same sun is being reflected in each and every wave. Now, as per the shape of the wave, as per its motion, the sun may appear in the reflection to be moving, to be oblong, to be elliptical. So all these variations, maybe they are in the reflection. But in any way, does it affect the sun? No. The sun is totally detached from it. The sun is in the sky. It is a reflection. Because of the ego, that individuality arises, and with that, all the sufferings that ensues, all the so-called the good and evil, the duality which we see in this life, the Atman transcends that. When we say God is all good, from the Vedantic standpoint, it is not the correct statement. God is something beyond good and evil. The question of good, bad, everything comes in this world of duality after the sun is being reflected. In that reflection may be oblong, it may be spherical, and I may say that oblong is not the correct reflection, it is bad, the spherical is the correct reflection. So all these things is pertaining to the reflection. The sun is in no way affected. It is apart from something both good and evil. So all these defects are of the tool, the sense organs. They in no way, in any way affect the self. So that's the thing. First, Shankaracharya says that all those things which are the component of the subtle body, they may be defective, but that in no way affect the self. But because of our ignorance, we identify with that, with the sense organs, and that's why we say, I am blind. I am never blind. I am the Atman, which is beyond the so-called this blindness or vision. It is something which transcends that. But as I identify myself with my sense organs, I say, I am blind, I am deaf, I am dumb. So these are all identifications. That I breathe, I am afflicted with hunger, thirst. These are all because of the identification. You may say that how to really understand, even with the common sense, that I am not the sense organs. Even you will find that if someone was having 100% vision and suddenly he becomes blind, if the eye was the part of his self, he would have said, I have become 80% of myself, 20% has gone. That if I am blind, that my eyes was a part of my real existence, then I am not supposed to be the full personality as I was. I would say I was 80% I. If I lose my limb, Do I say that I am not the same I? A part of me has gone? No. Then I feel I am the same I. When I was having the full perfect body, then also I was the whole I. Even when I lose my some part, still I feel I am the whole I. So there you will find that it is just because of ignorance we identify ourselves, but if you see the real feeling, we never feel, even in this life, we never feel that when some part of me is gone, that I have lost a part of my identity. No, I'm still the same I. Constant change is going on. I was a small young boy. I was going through the various changes of life. I was a young man. Then I became a middle-aged man. Then I become old. All these changes are happening to the body. I identify with the body. But if I really try to just listen to my inner feeling, do I feel I have changed? No. That same I, who was the young person, it is the same I who is at present the old man or the middle-aged man, whatever it may be. So the I never changed. So someone is witnessing all those change, but it is not something which is a part of the change. It is something which is witnessing. So all these things are pertaining to the either the gross body or the subtle body, but they are in no way the self. Self is something separate from it. So that's why he's saying that all this andhatva, mandatva, they all belong. Because I never, though I say I am blind, but I never feel that a part of my existence has gone. Even when I am blind, I know I am as I was, even when I had my full vision. There is nothing which has gone. The real me is the same. So that's the thing which indicates that these are something which pertaining to the subtle body, but they don't in no way affect the real me, the real self. So that's what has been spoken of in the 101st verse. Now in the 102nd verse, as we told, he will take one by one component to say that Atman is separate from that. So now he will say Atman is something different from the vitality, the vital forces, the prana. So what he's saying, Sankaracharya, Uchvasha Nishvasha, Vijrimbhana, Kshut, Prasyandanadi, Utkramanadika Kriya, Pranadi Karmani Vadanti Tatkya, Pranasya Dharmo, Ashana Pipase. So these are all the characteristics of prana, not of the self. What are these? Inhalation and exhalation. Uchvasa, Nishvasa. Vijrimbhana, yawning. Yawning is called Vijrimbhana. Kshut, sneezing is a kshut. Prasyandanadi, this secretion, that that various type of bodily secretions are there, that when we have this cough and cold, so this our nose will be running. So all these things are called secretion. When you have some infections, you will find that your eyes are flowing, the nose are running. So all these has been are the functions of the prana. The secretion speaks of the working of our antibody, that whenever there is some pathogens attacking us, the body reacts to it by producing these antigens, the antibodies, to fight. And that actually enables the lymphatic systems to help in eradicating the infection in the form of these various the secretions as the pus. So these secretions is like the secretion in the form of pus to get rid of all sorts of infection. So the secretion is called prasyandana. Even when in the summer I am perspiring, that also is prasyandana. So all these forms of secretions has been termed as prasyandana. So this is the work of the vital forces leaving the body. At the time of the death, there is a prana vayu called udana, which helps the subtle body to as if eject out of this gross body. So this is something which is called utkramana. Utkramana is the udana prana vayu. So this again is the function of the prana. So this is something even those who are going through that the natural process of death, you will find that we call it that if you have seen such patient, sometimes you will find just before the death, he will be as if having some hiccup, that constantly, but it is not an ordinary just hiccup. It is actually the prana vayu is trying to come out. So at that time the doctors say it's more just a few moments. his hope is gone. So that is the time when the pranavayu is going to come out. So this utkramana. So that is also has been categorized here, etc. These are all called by the experts, those who know the functioning of the body, of the mind. So they say that these are the functions of the prana. Pranadi karmani vadanti. And like hunger and thirst, they are also the functions of the prana. This in no way affects the Atman. The Atman is something separate from it. So, in the 102nd verse, Shankaracharya is distinguishing Atman from the vitality, from the vital force, from the prana. It is not same with the prana. Why he is doing all those things? You'll find in general notion. We say that when somebody is dying, they say pranavayu came out, and we as if identified the pranavayu with the Atman. So here Shankaracharya, that's why he's saying that the pranavayu is not the Atman. It is something different from it. So these are the various functions of the pranavayu, which has nothing to do with the Atman. Then in the from 103rd to the 105th, he will go to the discussion where he will say Atman is something different from the ego, that ahankara. This, in the 103rd verse, what he is saying, Antakaranam eteshu chakshuradeshu varshmani aham iti abhimanena tishtati abhasa tejasa. So this inner organ, the mind, has its sit in the organs such as the eye as well as the body. How? By identifying them with them and endued with the reflection of the Atma. This abhasa means the reflection. Aham iti abhimanena tishtati abhasa tejasa. So this self is reflecting on the mind and the body. How? First it reflects on the mind, and then the mind gets illumined by the Atman, and through that illumination, the mind now illumines the body. Just in a full moon night, that I may think it is the moon which gives me the light. But actually it is the sun which has illumined the moon. So the moon is like the mind. The sun which is not visible, that has illumined the moon, and the moon being illumined by the sun. In turn, its light gets reflected on the earth to illumine the earth. So similarly, the Atman is illuminating the mind. In turn, the mind is illuminating the body. All the actions are going in the body through the directions of the mind. All the perceptions are happening through the mind. All the actions by the directions of the mind through the body. So it is Atman. So that's why it is being told, this aham, the moment it is reflected in the mind, in turn in the body, the ego comes into picture. Aham, abhimana, that comes into picture. So this inner organ, so antakaranam eteshu chakshiradeshu. So the mind as well as the external organs, both are being illumined by the Atman. So the chakshu, it means the center of perception in the mind, as we told again and again. And varshmani is the golakas. This all the things which are in the gross body. These are not the eyes. These are the orifices. These orifices has been called as the varshmani. These are the golakas. They are the sockets. So this also in turn, first the mind is getting illumined by the Atman. In turn, then our eye sockets, they are also being directed by the mind. All the functions are happening through the mind. So everything, how it is happening? Once the Atman gets reflected in the body-mind complex, this ego develops, and this ego encompasses the entire our so-called limited individuality, both the subtle body as well as the gross body. So that's the thing which has been spoken of in the 103rd verse. Now how this ego works will be spoken of in the 104th and in the 105th verse. So we will go to the next two verses to understand the functioning of the ego. So 104th, ahankara savigyeya karta bhokta abhimani ayam satvadi guna yogena cha avasthatrayam ashnute. This is a very, these verses are really wonderful in a way that thousands of years back they have analyzed the mind in such a wonderful way. This is a wonderful thing which even in modern psychology now they are finding. What this saying? Ahankara savigya karta bhokta abhimani ayam. It is because of the ahankara. Know this ahankara, which identifies itself with the body and with the mind, to give us the sensation that I am the karta, I am the doer, and bhokta, I am the enjoyer, I am the experiencer. The Atman is neither the enjoyer nor the experiencer. It is because of the ego. The mind creates that hallucination, creates that illusion that I am the doer, I am the experiencer, I am the enjoyer. So karta, bhokta, abhimani ayam. And sattvadi guna yogena, the three gunas they speak of. With the help of these three gunas, it enters into three states of our existence. Sattva, Raja, Tama, the three guna. With these three gunas, it enters into three states of existence. What are the three states? Waking state, dream state, and deep sleep state. So now it may be confusing that what it is actually speaking. Now let us try to understand with our modern terminology what actually is speaking of. Ahankara savigya karta bhokta abhimani ayam. It is because of the ego we develop the idea of the doer and the enjoyer. So what happens? Just to understand with the help of the modern psychology, we can say that the moment the mind is activated, how the mind is working, in the modern psychology they say a very interesting thing, that the mind has innumerable mental modules. Innumerable. How these modules have developed? In the process of evolution as per our likings and dislikings. So as a microbe, just take that example. In a petri dish, I am seeing through the microscope that there are some randomly moving microbes. And now I put some nutrient in the center, all gather direction. They start moving towards it. Instead of nutrient, if I put some toxin there, they move away from it. They gather out of direction. Why? So as per the Vedanta, they will say the moment the self got identified with that microbe body, the ego emanates. What is ego? Ego is nothing but the echo of the self through the body, mind, senses. Just when you are standing in front of a mountain, you are shouting out your name and you feel someone is calling you from the mountain. It's an illusion. It's just an echo. Similarly, the self in the presence of the body-mind complex, the self which is eternal, it says, I am eternal. I am ever perfect. I am beyond all needs, all wants. I am ever fulfilled. The reflection comes from the body-mind complex. I am eternal. I am ever fulfilled. I am beyond all wants, all needs. But now, this body-mind complex is a flow. It is not eternal. It is generated at some point of time. It is going to die at some point of time. But the echo is coming from there. I am eternal. This creates that ignorance. That ahankar comes from that ignorance. What is the ignorance? I forgot it is I, the real me, who is eternal, who is beyond all this flow. I am just beyond it. I am really eternal. But hearing the echo from that body-mind complex, I identify myself with the body-mind complex, and as if I hear some voice is saying from there, I am eternal. So this is the ignorance. From this ignorance, from ahankara, this ahankara came. Identification with the body-mind complex. Now what will happen? The Atman is saying I am eternal, but the microbe finds that even a little change of stimuli is going to kill me. A little more heat will kill me. A little more change of the alkalinity of the water is going to kill me. If it becomes more acidic, it is going to kill me. So it is constantly fighting with the nature. Whenever it finds any favorable circumstance, like the nutrient, it is being drawn towards it. In place of nutrient, if it's some toxin, it moves away from it. What it speaks of? Raga, Dvesha, Abhinivesha. The moment the ignorance from the avidya, the asmita, in the yoga term, it is just parallel to Vedanta. The moment that because of ignorance, the ahankara comes, now I react in this way, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. So in the process of evolution, so many external stimuli were there with which we were reacting. And all these reactions are not forgotten. They are all stored in the subconscious mind. And they have created these mental modules. For this stimuli, this is the response that is stored. For that stimuli, this is the response that is stored. These are all stored. Now, in our life, what happens? That our mind has innumerable these mental modules, with each module having this fixed stimuli response conditioning. Now, in a particular situation, when I am placed in a particular situation, in a particular environment, one of the module will get activated with its particular response. It is going to respond in a particular way. But somehow that it will give me a feeling I am responding. But is it really I am responding? No. The ego is creating that hallucination. It is actually the mental module which has got activated. It has its own responses. It is responding as per the response by which it has been programmed. But it gives me a feeling I am responding. So this is the thing which is the finding even in the modern psychology. There are lots of experiments. I am not going, because in so many contexts we go on with the specific examples. So in general, this is the idea, that we have innumerable mental modules. At a time, a particular module gets activated, which has its own responses fixed, but it gives me a feeling I am the doer. So actually, it is all the mental modules which has got activated because of the ego. The ignorance came into picture, the ego came into picture. From that, this has all generated, and they are working as per the external circumstances, giving me the feeling that I am the doer. You will find that the same me, the same person, behaves in so different way in different environment. I will find that I need not have to take a conscious decision. When I'm in my office with my colleague, I'm a total different person. The same person when I'm at home with my children, with my family, I'm a total different person. I've gone to some religious place. I find I have become a different person. It's not that I am feigning or faking. What has happened? As per the environment, a particular module gets activated, which is already there, and it reacts in a particular way, giving me a feeling I am doing, but actually I'm not doing. So this actually shows the importance of environment. I have no control over my decision. We sometimes feel overconfident about it, but know it for certain that you have no control. Just you will find nowadays with the media it happens. You open the YouTube channel most probably to listen to a song or to view some particular video, but before that already something has came and you are carried away by that. So what has happened? The moment you expose yourself to certain environment, the stimuli response conditioning has started. It is taking you. The entire world of advertisement is based on that. So what in general we want to speak, even in the modern psychology they speak, I am not the karta. I am not the doer. When the ego comes into picture, the mind immediately starts working as per its pre-programming and giving me a feeling I am doing, but I am not doing. So the real self is beyond that. So it is the ahankara that creates the sense of karta. And also the same of bhokta, the enjoyer. I am really enjoying? No. All the so-called enjoyment is the working of the nature, the nature's tool. The nature has used the happiness as a tool to sustain itself, giving me the feeling, a wrong notion that I am enjoying. Am I really enjoying? No. You'll find if I really enjoy, I am supposed to be satiated. I never get satiated. There's a tremendous dissatisfaction. Why? That all the desires which we have at last can be boiled down to 3 desires. You cannot find any other types of desire beyond these 3 categories. What are they? Putraishana, Vittaishana, Yashaishana. Desire for progeny, desire for wealth, desire for name and fame. These are 3 desires. All your desires at last can be categorized into these 3. Nothing else. And all these 3 has to do with the sustenance of the nature. Desire for progeny. What it speaks of? Sustenance of the nature. Through your progeny, the nature is sustained, it continues. Through wealth, first you have to sustain yourself, then only you can think of your progeny. So the wealth also speaks of sustenance of the nature. Yashaishana, name and fame. Unless I can prove myself to be really a worthy person, how can I propagate my genes? No one will marry me. That's why the struggle for this academic study, getting established in some profession. Why? at last to get a perfect match, so that through me the genes are propagated. It is the working of the nature. So all these three ashanas are the working of the nature. Now how it works? That when your desire is fulfilled, you will get a tremendous happiness. How? There will be tremendous secretion of the so-called, the present day language, secretion of dopamine. That's the pleasure hormone, gives you tremendous happiness. But if you find the nature of its working, it's wonderful. That the moment your desire is fulfilled, at that time there is a tremendous secretion of dopamine, but immediately after that there is a depletion. It doesn't stay there. It depletes. Why it depletes? Because the nature has to be sustained. If after taking food for once, if I feel satiated forever, I will never take food. I'm going to die. So it has to deplete. So why has to deplete? Because the nature has to sustain. So when my desire is fulfilled, there is a tremendous ecstasy, and next moment it has to go down. But nature, see the working of the nature. What it does? I always forget the evaporation. I always remember the ecstasy. So nowadays, it was a very interesting thing that it is a modern finding that now that there are so many serials in the TV depicting the crime. And what they say, that how someone has done some criminal act but was at last caught. He was in the jail. So now what the lesson goes out, that if you are doing something out of the way, you will be in the jail. But the study says, by seeing all those criminal serials, people are getting prone to crime. It is not supposed to be. Because the lesson from that is that if you do all those things, you are in jail. But then how they are actually encouraging for crime? Because they say, that's the working of the nature again. I see only the ecstasy, I forget all the dangers, the depletion. I think I will be safe. And that encourages people. So that way, this so-called, some people think that crime serials will make me alert, but actually it is making you victim. It creates a tendency in the young generation to do crime. So why? It's the working of the nature. I remember the ecstasy, I forget the evaporation. I forget all the negativities. Only that the flowery fantasy, that only remains in my mind. That's the working of the nature. If it doesn't remains there, I won't be motivated to do it. The nature is working, the nature cannot sustain itself that way. So I am motivated only because I always remember, my memory is filtered. I remember the ecstasy, I forget all the negativities, the depletions. And the fourth, you will find always there is more happiness in the anticipation than in the act itself. When you are planning, you are fantasizing. When you are in the act, the happiness is already gone. The thing that you are thinking that why it has happened, the ones you are anticipating, the nature's work is done. Because of the anticipation, you have been motivated to do it. So once you have been motivated, the nature knows, now you will do it. Why it will give you happiness? There is no dopamine when you have already in the act itself. When you have planned in the morning that I will go to the restaurant with my friends and enjoy, when you are already there, you find you are not feeling that ecstasy. You are already bored. It's a very common feeling. Why? So you will find that I am not the bhokta. The nature has planned in such a way, it has made happiness a tool to make me do something by which the nature is sustained. That's why I am never satiated. We go on trying, but we never find satisfaction. That's what is the real meaning of the word dukkha. Dukkha doesn't mean suffering, it means dissatisfaction. The suffering and dissatisfaction are the same thing. When I'm enjoying a delicacy, I'm not suffering. I'm of course enjoying. But am I satisfied? A big question mark. Because when I am enjoying, I'm relishing, already I have developed a craving for the second serve. So that's suffering and dissatisfaction is not the same. So when Buddha says there is dukkha in the world, he actually means there is dissatisfaction. It's not suffering. If it's translated as suffering, it will be wrong translation. So now you will understand. Am I the karta? Am I the bhokta? The real Atman is separate from it. It is because of the ego that generates in the mind the idea of the karta and bhokta. And that's the one thing. And another sattvadi guna. Yogena cha avasthatrayam ashmata. With the help of sattva rajatama, it enters into the three states of waking, dream, and deep sleep. Very interesting. By saying that, one thing they are saying that when you are in dreaming state, that's pure sattva. Even when you are having nightmare, it is pure sattva. You say, how come I am having nightmare? It is sattva. That's what the scripture says. And when you are awake, it is full of rajas. And where you are in deep sleep, that is tamas. What actually is speaking of? Sometimes we don't understand the terms in its proper sense, because those terms which were used in the past, we never try to relate with the present terminology. Actually, three gunas speaks of nothing but stimuli, response, conditioning, nothing else. So you will find in the scriptures, sattva, what is sattva? Illumination. What is rajas? Action. What is tamas? Darkness. And now I think, when I am studying and my mind is getting illumined, that is sattva. When I am always full of action, that is rajas. In deep sleep, it is tamas. It is correct. But what actually is the real meaning? Is that the study itself is sattva? No. That when this world is nothing but the stimuli, response, conditioning. Does a stone see this world? No. Does it react to the stimuli? No. When I am responding to the stimuli, what is happening? This external light, whatever the perception is there, that is illuminating my mind. How it is illuminating? The mind has all the ideas. It was in darkness. Till the perception happens, all the ideas are there, but they are in darkness. So all those tanmatras, the piecemeal perceptions, unless it is illumined by some perception, by some stimuli, it is tamas. In deep sleep, there is no perception. That's why it's full state of tamas. In the waking state, whatever stimuli comes, that makes me react, isn't it? I see something and constantly I'm reacting to that situation in the waking state. So that's why it is rajas. And in the dream state, constant mind is, there's so many sparks in the mind, illumination is happening. But are you reacting? No. Only pure illumination is happening. Even when you are having nightmare, it is just illumination. You may say, yes, sometimes someone do sleepwalking. But these three gunas, when they have been spoken of, that what's the predominant thing? That's been actually the real nature. That when in the deep sleep they say it is sattva, it doesn't mean that sometimes that little actions may be there that they are not denying. But predominantly it is just illumination, not reaction. You are in no way reacting to it. You're just, mind is getting illumined, and all the things which you're seeing in the mind, for which there is no such response. Even the responses which you feel that I am running, it is nothing but illumination. In the mind, that illumination is there, you are running. But are you really running? Had the really response taken place? No. So it is just pure illumination. So that's why how wonderfully it has been told that these three gunas are generating these three states. The pure sattva is the dream state, the rajas is the waking state, and tamas, of course, is the deep sleep state. When all the so-called, all the tanmatras, all the concepts, ideas are there in your mind. Your mind is not vacant, but they are not illumined. They are in the darkness. So all these three, how it happens, the moment the ego comes into picture, we are bound to respond to the stimuli. That a living being, how it is separate from an inanimate object? By the stimuli response conditioning, nothing else. That we all respond to the stimuli. An inanimate object doesn't respond to any stimuli. The stimuli response conditioning speaks of the world which we are seeing. The entire world, the entire universe is nothing but the stimuli response conditioning. Does a stone know the universe exists? That in our scriptures they say that you are Mahato Mahiyan. You are greater than the greatest. Well, how come? The sun is such a big celestial body. Compared to the sun, compared to the stars, I am just a small an ant, as if crawling on this earth. How can I be bigger than the sun? The idea is that does the sun, that it's a huge planet, it is a huge star. Does the sun know it? No. It is I who certify that I have seen that it has illumined my mind. From that illumination, the concept of the sun as a great celestial body has came to me. So it is as if I who am certifying the sun, that it is by my certificate it is becoming great. It itself doesn't know that it is great. So the one within me, though I am infinitely small as small as per my physical body is concerned, but the one within me, he is perceiving the greatness. Even the greatness of the sun, the galaxies, the celestial bodies, they most probably also don't know. I know it. So the one who is seeing this entire universe. So that's the individual. That's the individual from where that sattva, rajas, tamas, three gunas are finding expression. And accordingly, how they are finding expression? In the three states of our existence. In the deep sleep state, we are experiencing nothing. In the wakeful state, what is happening? Whatever stimuli is entering our mind, that is generating a response as per our temperament. In the morning, I wake up, I see the red flower. If I am a devotee, I go and pluck it and offer it in the altar. If I am just a gardener, I won't pluck it at all. I will water the plant so that there will be more flowers. And if I have some sense of aesthetics, I am not a devotee, just have a sense of aesthetics, I may again pluck it, but most probably make a nice bouquet and keep it somewhere in the living room, in the living space. So all the responses are generated as per my biases. The stimuli, as per my biases, I am responding. When it happens, not in the dream state, it is only in the wakeful state. So these responses are happening in the waking state. So that's why it is rajas. In the dream state, your mind is getting illumination. All the reactions which you are seeing, that someone is chasing me, I am running, that also is just illumination. In the mind is just getting illumination. Just the way when you are watching the movie screen, so many things are going on, but you are motionless. All those actions which are going on is just the projection on the screen. So similarly here in the dream sleep state, you are not in any way reacting. The mind is creating all those pictures and you are just watching it. So that's why it's pure sattva. It's only illumination, no reaction. And in the tamas, all the concepts are there in the mind. It's not that my mind is vacant, but as they are not illuminated, they are in the darkness. That is the state of tamas. So how nicely you will find these slokas, if you go to that analysis, you will find how wonderfully the mind has been studied. At last, they say that this is all the working of the mind, but the self who is behind it is in no way attached to it. So that's the idea which has been spoken of. So we just conclude our class here. The 105th sloka also will be speaking that all this that we have already discussed that idea. Vishayanam, let's just, because as we have already discussed, in short we can just read out that sloka and you will immediately relate to its meaning. Vishayanam anukulye sukhi. That as we gave that example of that microbe, that whenever it is finding favorable circumstances, it is sukhi. It is running towards it. Vishayanam anukulya sukhi. From where it has evolved? From where that idea of happiness came? Because of the ego. That ego, how it has generated? Because of the ignorance. The self which is saying I am eternal, that is echoed from that microbe body. Now that microbe wants to realize that eternity through that microbe body, which is never possible. But that's what it is chasing after. And that's why if there is some anukula situation, there is some favorable circumstances, it is happy. It is drawn towards it. Dukhi viparyaya. In the contrary, if it is not something which is favorable, viparyaya, then it is dukhi. Sukham dukham chatad dharma sadanandasya na Atman. So this Atman is Sadananda. Sukha Dukha is the characteristic of the ego, but it is in no way affected by the Atman. So that's what the 105th verse speaks of. So now you will find that how Shankaracharya is analyzing the working of the mind, the working of the ego, at last to come to the conclusion the self is something separate from it. The self is something which transcends it. It is in no way identified with it. So with this, we stop our discussion. We will continue with the succeeding verses to continue with the analysis of the various layers of our existence to come to the conclusion the self is something separate from all these various layers of existence. So with this, we conclude our class today. Thank you all. Namaskar.